Welcome to the Right Hand Roadmap, the podcast for seconds in command of founder-led companies. I'm your host, Megan Long, owner of Second First. In each episode, we show you the path to success on your journey as the #2 leader in entrepreneurial companies. I am so happy you are here. Today, we're going to be talking about how to decode your CEO or to understand how an entrepreneur thinks. If you are a more operations-minded executive, I'm sure sometimes if you work for a stereotypical visionary entrepreneur, it can be a little bit confusing or frustrating on trying to figure out exactly where their mind is. So we're going to cover the mindset of an entrepreneur, some key qualities that are just universal for all founders. And then we're also going to talk about some thought patterns that entrepreneurs have that might be surprising to you. So entrepreneurs are usually these fast-moving visionaries. They're big picture thinkers and ambitious idea generators. And they're often also disorganized, intense, demanding, and might seem inconsistent. So these are the traits that can be frustrating to more operations-minded executives. But it's also important to note that these are actually also an entrepreneur's superpowers. Their willingness to take risks, learn from failures, create the playbook as they go. These are the things that often lead to their success. These entrepreneurial traits foster innovation, growth, and creativity. I like to divide the entrepreneurial mindset into 3 categories: how they accept and own risk, how they internalize resilience, and how they view failure. So let's start with risk. Entrepreneurs are going to be willing to take on more risk than any other employee in their company, including you. They hold the ultimate responsibility for the outcomes of the business. They understand what is at risk with every single decision that they make. It weighs very heavily on them. They also know the upside of taking risks in new products, new services, and strategies. They hold the ultimate responsibility for the outcomes in the business. It's not uncommon for even an entrepreneur's personal mortgage to guarantee business loans or things of that sort. Like their personal and professional are so gray, they're just intertwined. So while they understand what is at risk with every decision they make, it weighs very heavily. They also know the upside of taking risks in new products, new services, new strategies. So as a second in command, you have to start being comfortable with experimentation and pivoting quickly when something doesn't work. Their pace is usually going to feel much too fast, and your pace is usually going to feel much too slow for them. So there's a healthy middle ground somewhere in there. Second is resilience. So resilience is a key characteristic of this entrepreneurial mindset. Mistakes are inevitable, and no one can be successful 100% of the time. But someone with the entrepreneurial mindset will be able to bounce back and continue inspiring the team after a failure. They're anesthetized to rejection or bad news. This strong resilience is the reason that they're able to continue moving forward after things go wrong. And we touched on it a little bit, but then there's failure. While failure is typically viewed negatively, especially to you because you're probably a high performer, it probably sends chills down your spine thinking about failing. But many entrepreneurs actually depend on various degrees of failure. Trying and failing is how many founders even learn what works and what doesn't work. It's not viewed as a negative. It's viewed as a positive because that's an indicator of progress. As a second in command, it's your job to help your CEO understand the possible outcomes and consequences to allow them to make informed decisions. Outside of this entrepreneurial mindset and these 3 key characteristics, there are also some very common thinking habits that entrepreneurs have. And there's 2 sides to this. The first is awareness for you as the second in command to understand these are the things that are going on through your CEO's mind when they're laying in bed awake at night, when they go quiet at a meeting. Like these are the things that they're thinking. The other side of this is the necessity of self-awareness for the entrepreneur. So it's important that entrepreneurs understand that these are thinking patterns that they fall into that sometimes can generate chaos in their organization, that can make your partnership as the second in command a little more tumultuous and a little bit tougher because they do just have these neuro pathways ground into their brain. So it's a little bit two-sided, one for you just to better understand them and also for them to understand that they could be creating some damage if they stay in these thought patterns. An example is, I must suffer the consequences of everyone's actions, right? So thinking that the entire company is on their shoulders and it all falls on them. Well, that's partially true because, as we mentioned, it could be their mortgage that they guaranteed a loan on, but they have to understand that they have a team around them. They have you as a second in command. They have all of these really great people propping them up and helping them succeed. Another is, I've been here since the beginning and I know how things work, right? So maybe being a little closed off to other people's input because they think because they created everything from scratch themselves, that's how things should be done. Every problem should be solved quickly. This goes to the pace that we were talking about, where they typically will move at a much faster pace than everyone else. Good for you to be aware that whatever feels uncomfortable for you is probably the right pace. And then whatever feels uncomfortable for them in terms of slowing down is also probably the right pace. No communication must mean nothing is happening. We cover this in our 4 communication rules with entrepreneurs, but this is that going dark part where you think you have been asked to do something, you're going to go do it because you're a high performer and think nothing of it. If they don't get that feedback loop back to confirm that either it happened or just visibility into knowing that something that they asked is being done, the default's usually going to assume that no one's doing anything. And this is where it gets dangerous, where they roll their sleeves up themselves, they dig into the weeds themselves, they start doing double work or asking other people to do work that isn't their job. So this is an example of where if they fall into this thinking pattern, they could start to cause chaos in the company. I can change my mind and direction. Everyone just needs to keep up with me. So this is that pivoting quickly element that we talked about under the entrepreneurial mindset. And while it's true, it's their company, they can change their mind. Again, it's your job as the second in command to help them understand consequences so they know, okay, is this actually something that I want to do or not? And then the final entrepreneurial thinking habit that is usually the most surprising to leaders and managers is that in the back of their mind, they are always a little concerned that they could go out of business, that you can't take anything for granted because tomorrow it could all be gone. And that is so surprising for people to hear, especially people who understand how successful a business might be. There was one workshop that we were hosting, and this came up where an entrepreneur was like, yeah, of course, I always believe that we're going to go out of business. And they were having a record year. So their COO was shocked. They're like, but we are killing it right now. We're the top amongst all of our competitors. We can barely even keep up with demand. And it didn't matter. It was just, this is just something that is inherently in the DNA of an entrepreneur where they just feel like it could all go away tomorrow. So that awareness for you as a second in command, reporting directly to them, being their most trusted employee and partner, is if you know that they lay there in bed and they think, I could lose this all. Like things are going great, but what about next month? When's the next pandemic coming, right? That was something no one expected. So when it comes to developing the partnership, the friendship, the working relationship between you and your entrepreneur, being aware that these are their most common thinking habits, these are their very real anxieties, I think it will go a long way in influencing how you two work together. To find show notes and links to anything mentioned in this episode, visit secondverse.com/20. Be sure to subscribe to catch future episodes and leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And remember, you don't have to navigate being a second in command alone when you have the right hand roadmap.